Hello everyone. We will study DNA repair pathways and radiation-induced chromosomal aberrations. Um, I'm starting with the introduction. Radiation induces a large number of lesions in DNA, most of which are repaired successfully by the cell. The number of DNA lesions per cell detected immediately after one gray X-ray dose is approximately like base damage 1000, single strand breaks 1000, double strand breaks 40. In intact DNA, single-strand breaks are of little biologic consequences as far as cell killing is concerned because they repair readily using the opposite strand as a template. But if the repair is incorrect or misrepair, then it will lead to mutation. If both strands of the DNA are broken and the breaks are well separated, they repair again, then repair again occurs readily. The two breaks are handled separately. If the breaks in the two strands are opposite one another or separated by only a few base pairs, then double strand break occurs. It will lead to the cleavage of the chromatin into two pieces. These double strand breaks are the most important lesions produced in chromosomes by radiation. The interaction of two double strand breaks may result in either cell killing or carcinogenesis or mutation. This is a diagram which shows single and double strand DNA breaks caused by radiation. The figure A it shows the normal DNA helix. So we can see here clearly the complementary nature of the two strands of the DNA. Like here we can see like adenine it pairs with thymine, and guanine it pairs with cytosine. And in picture B, we can see that there is a break in one strand of the DNA, like here. So it will be repaired readily by using the other strand of the DNA as a template. In picture C, we can see that there is a break. There are breaks in both the strands of the DNA, and these both breaks can be repaired using the opposite DNA strand as a template. While in this picture D, it shows us that if there is a break in both the strands, if there are breaks in both the strands and they are directly opposite or separated by only a few base pairs, this may lead to a double strand break in which the chromatin snaps into two pieces. So what are the cellular responses to radiation induced DNA damage? Cell cycle checkpoint pathways. There are three principal places in the cell cycle at which checkpoints induced by DNA damage function. And these three places are at the border between the G1 phase and S phase. Like here we can see in this picture, this is a picture of the cell cycle. So the border between the G1 phase and the S phase, and then the intra S phase, and the border between the G2 phase and mitosis. So these are the three places in the cell cycle at which checkpoints induced by DNA damage functions. Cells with an intact checkpoint function that have sustained DNA damage stop progressing through the cell cycle. They are arrested at the next checkpoint in the cell cycle. Ataxia telangiectasia mutated ATM is an apical kinase for the induction of each of these cell cycle checkpoint pathways, which we have seen just in the previous slide. So, for example, cells with damaged DNA in G1 phase, they avoid replicating the damage by arresting at the G1S interface through ATM-dependent activation of P53 and P21. Cells in S phase at the time of irradiation transiently arrest in S phase by activation of the checkpoint kinase 2, leading to inhibition of cyclin-dependent kinase 2. The G1S and intra-S checkpoints, they inhibit the replication of the damaged DNA, hence thereby increasing cell survival. G2 checkpoint delays the progression of cells with damaged DNA into mitosis by activating CHK1, checkpoint kinase 1. And there will be inhibition of the mitotic cyclin dependent kinase 1. The G2 checkpoint prevents the propagation of cells with damaged DNA and permits time for DNA repair, and hence promotes survival following radiation. So the question arises, why do we need to repair the DNA? The maintenance of the integrity of the information in DNA molecules is of utmost importance to the survival of a particular organism as well as to survival of the species. The major responsibility for the fidelity of replication resides in the specific pairing of nucleotide bases, and this can be ensured by monitoring the base pairing twice. First, it is monitored at the time of insertion of the deoxyribonucleoside triphosphates, and later by an energy requiring mechanism that removes all improper bases. So, starting with the DNA repair pathways, the mechanism used to repair ionizing radiation-induced base damage are different from the mechanism that are used to repair DNA double-strand breaks. Different repair pathways are used to repair DNA damage depending on the stage of the cell cycle. And mutations in individual genes result in radiation hypersensitivity. Radiation sensitive mutants appear either to be directly involved in the repair process or to function as molecular checkpoint controlling elements. So starting with the base excision repair, we know that the bases on the opposite strands of the DNA, they must be complementary with each other, like adenine pairs with thymine with a double hydrogen bond, and guanine pairs with cytosine with a triple hydrogen bond. And suppose there is an like a putative single base mutation occurs in any of the strands of the in any one of the strand of the DNA, like here it is represented by a letter U. So it will be first removed by a glycosylase or DNA ligase. Here this enzyme glycosylase has come into play because as we know that the bond between a sugar and a base is a glycosidic bond. So the enzyme glycosylase will come to break this bond, to remove this abnormal base U. And then the removal of this sugar residue will occur by another enzyme, that is apurinic endonuclease 1, APE1. Replacement of the correct nucleotide will occur by DNA polymerase beta, and it will be completed by a DNA ligase 3 and XRCC1 mediated ligation. If suppose if there is more than one nucleotide to be replaced, like here double U is there, and it represents the putative mutation, then a complex will be formed consisting of replication factor C, proliferating cell nuclear antigen PCNA, DNA polymerase delta or epsilon, and this complex will perform the repair synthesis. And overlapping flap structure will be formed in this process, and that will be removed by flap endonuclease 1. And finally, the DNA strands, they will be sealed by ligase 1. Suppose if there is a defect in base excision repair, it does not result in cellular radiosensitivity. But one exception is there. If there is a mutation of the X-ray cross complementing factor 1, XRCC1 gene, then it confers about 1.7-fold increase in radiation sensitivity. This is a picture which shows base excision repair pathways, and we can see in picture A, there is a single abnormal base U, and it will be removed by DNA glycosylase. And then here this is a base, so sugar will be there, and that will be removed by APE1, apurinic endonuclease 1. And for the repair of the DNA strand, there is an enzyme DNA polymerase beta, and finally ligation of the strands occur by DNA ligase 3 and XRCC1. This XRCC1 helps in the binding of the this ligase with the strand. So it facilitates the action of the DNA ligase 3. And this is a picture B which shows there are two abnormal bases, U and U. They are first removed by apurinic endonuclease, and then a complex will be formed consisting of RFC, pCNA, DNA polymerase delta, and epsilon. And we can see here clearly this flap-like structure that will be removed by flap endonuclease 1, and then DNA ligase 1 for the ligation of the DNA strand. Then other mechanism of repair is the nucleotide excision repair. So it removes bulky ducts in the DNA such as pyrimidine dimers, and it can be subdivided into two pathways: global genome repair and transcription coupled repair. So what is the difference between these two type of repairs? So global genome, it is a genome wide repair, means the lesions can be removed from DNA that encodes or does not encode for genes. Means encoding region, means coding region or non-coding, both will be repaired. While in transcription coupled repair, it only removes lesion in the DNA strands of actively transcribed genes. So the mechanism of global genome or transcription coupled, that differs only in the detection of the lesion. The remainder of the pathway used to repair the damage is the same for both. So what are the steps in the this one nucleotide excision repair? So first step is the damage recognition. Then DNA incisions that bracket the lesion, usually between 24 and 32 nucleotides in length. And then the removal of the region containing the adducts. And then repair synthesis to fill in the gap region, and finally DNA ligation. Mutation in the nucleotide excision repair genes does not lead to ionizing radiation sensitivity, as we have seen for the base excision repair. But suppose if there is a defective nucleotide excision repair mechanism, then it will increase sensitivity to UV-induced DNA damage and anti-cancer agents such as alkylating agents that induce bulky adducts. And germline mutations in the nucleotide excision repair genes will lead to human DNA repair deficiency disorders like xeroderma pigmentosum. So these patients, xeroderma pigmentosum, they are hypersensitive to ultraviolet light. They have increased risk of developing skin cancer to 1,000 to 2,000 fold, and this inherited defect seems to involve the repair of damaged DNA, particularly thymine dimers. So this is a picture which shows the nucleotide excision repair pathways. So in this picture we can see that there are first there is UV DNA cross linkers, then damage recognition, and it is occurring in two different ways. The two pathways, as we have read, global genome and transcription coupled. So global genome repair, it uses the XPC and XPE protein complexes, whereas transcription coupled, it uses CSB and CSA. XPC stands for Xeroderma pigmentosum complementation group C and Xeroderma pigmentosum complementation group E, while CSA and B stands for Cockayne syndrome A and B genes respectively. So after this recognition step, the rest of the steps are same for both the pathways, as we have just seen. So then what happens? Following recognition, the lesion is demarked by binding of the transcription factor 2H complex, XPA and RPA. This XPA stands for Xeroderma pigmentosum complementation group A, and RPA is replication protein A. And then this TF2H complex helicase function unwinds the DNA and generates an open stretch around the lesion, at which point the XPG and XPF-ERCC1. XPG stands for Xeroderma pigmentosum complementation group G, and ERCC1 stands for excision repair cross complementation group 1 gene. So this XPF-ERCC endonucleases make incisions at the 3' and 5' ends, releasing a 24 to 32 oligomer. There will be dual incisions and release of an excised oligomer. And then a gap will be created due to this excision. So uh, the resulting gap that will be filled by polymerases delta or epsilon, and it will be aided by RFC and PCNA. And the strand is finally ligated. Now the other repair mechanism is a double strand break repair. So in eukaryotic cells, DNA double strand breaks repaired by two basic processes, and that processes are homologous recombination repair and the non-homologous end joining. So the choice of the repair is biased by the phase of the cell cycle and by the abundance of repetitive DNA. What are the differences between these two types of repair, like homologous recombination, non-homologous end joining? So homologous recombination repair, it requires an undamaged DNA strand as a template. So it is an error-free process because it is having an undamaged DNA strand as a template, and with the help of that template, it can repair its damaged portion. While the non-homologous end joining, it mediates end-to-end joining. It is an error-prone process, so it is pre-mutagenic. HRR generally occurs during late S or G2 phase, while non-homologous that generally occurs during G1 phase. But both these repair pathways, they are not mutually exclusive. I mean, both have been found to be active in the late S and late S G2 phase of the cell cycle. So starting with the non-homologous end joining repair pathway, so the immediate response of a cell to a DNA double strand break is the activation of a group of sensors. Then these sensors, they will promote DNA repair, and they will also prevent the cell from proceeding in the cell cycle. And these sensors are ATM and RAD3 related ATR. And protein kinases are also needed for this repair, and they belong to the phosphatidylinositol 3 kinase related kinase family, PIKK family. So the sensors and protein kinases, they are recruited to the sites of uh, DNA strand breaks that are induced by ionizing radiation, and the competition for the repair, like whether it will be by homologous recombination or non-homologous end joining, it will be regulated by the protein, that is 53BP1. And then the ligation of the DNA double strand break by non-homologous end joining, this does not require sequence homology. So what are the steps for this non-homologous end joining? First, there will be end recognition, means where there is lesion, there is a lesion in the DNA strand, that will be recognized by Ku binding. This Ku is a heterodimer, so it will recognize the ends of the DNA damage. Then recruitment of the DNA dependent protein kinase catalytic subunit, DNA PKCS, then end processing, and then fill-in synthesis or end bridging, and then ligation. End recognition occurs when the Ku heterodimer and the DNA protein kinase catalytic subunit, they bind to the ends of the DNA double strand breaks. Then Ku also recruits an additional protein named Artemis. This Artemis possesses an endonuclease activity, and it forms a physical complex with DNA protein kinase catalytic subunit. So this Ku DNA protein kinase catalytic subunit complex that is bound to the DNA ends can phosphorylate Artemis and activate its endonuclease activity to deal with 5' and 3' overhangs that will be produced in the further steps. End processing is followed by fill-in synthesis of gaps formed by the Artemis endonuclease activity. DNA polymerase mu or lambda has been found to be associated with the Ku DNA XRCC4 DNA ligase 4 complex and serves as the polymerase for the fill-in reaction. Ligation of the nicked DNA ends that have been processed is mediated by a PNK XRCC4 DNA ligase 4 XLF complex that is probably recruited by the Ku heterodimer. PNK, that stands for polynucleotide kinase, is a protein that has both 3' DNA phosphatase as well as 5' DNA kinase activities. And it serves to remove end groups that are not ligatable to allow end joining. Because in non-homologous end joining, there is not a simple ligation of the broken ends. It needs some modification. There may be some portions which are not ligatable, so that should be removed. And XRCC4 like factor XLF is a protein that stimulates the activity of DNA ligase 4. Non-homologous end joining often goes undetected in mammalian cells as errors in the non-coding DNA that composes most human genome has little consequence. This is a picture which shows the non-homologous end joining. So we can see here that DNA strand breaks are recognized by the ATM and mRN complex. ATM and mRN complex. This mRN complex consists of MRE11, RAD50 and nucleotide binding site 1. So this results in resection of the DNA ends. Then here we can see clearly 53BP1 histones. Sorry, 53BP1 protein. So this inhibits the homologous recombination repair so that this cycle goes in the path of non-homologous end joining. Then double strand break and recognition. This occurs by Ku heterodimer. And then finally, recruitment of the DNA protein kinase catalytic subunit by Ku heterodimer. And it also recruits Artemis, that is a protein having endonuclease activity. So endonuclease, it will cut the DNA strand, and finally a gap will be created that will be repaired by DNA polymerase, and then finally a complex will be formed consisting of XRCC4, PNK, DNA ligase 4, and XLF, and this complex helps in the final ligation step. Now let's come to the homologous recombination repair. The primary function of this repair is to repair the DNA and to restore the functionality of replication forks with DNA double strand breaks. So this process requires physical contact with an undamaged chromatid or chromosome to serve as a template for repair to occur. And during recombination, ATM phosphorylates the breast cancer tumor suppressor protein BRCA1. Then this BRCA1 then recruited to the site of the double strand break that has been bounded by the NBS MRE11 RAD50 protein complex. Then this MRE11 and other endonucleases resect the DNA. That results in a 3' single strand DNA that serves as a binding site for Rad51. And this BRCA2, which is attracted to the double strand break by BRCA1, facilitates the loading of Rad51 onto RPA coated single strand overhangs produced by endonuclease resection. Rad51 protein possesses the ability to form nucleofilaments. It catalyzes strand exchange with the complementary strand in the undamaged chromosome. And there are 5 additional paralogs of Rad51. They also bind to the RPA coated single stranded region and recruit Rad52, which protects against exonucleolytic degradation. To facilitate repair, Rad54 uses its ATPase activity to unwind the double stranded molecule. The two invading ends serve as primers for DNA synthesis, and the so-called holiday junctions are resolved by MMS4 and MUS81 by non-crossing over. The holiday junctions disengage and DNA strand pairing is followed by gap filling. Here, the inactivation of this homologous recombination repair genes, this results in reduced sensitivity and genomic instability. So this is a picture which shows the homologous recombination repair pathway. So the initial step in homologous recombination repair is the recognition of the lesion and processing of the double strand DNA ends into 3' DNA single strand tails by mRNA complex. mRNA complex formed by MRE11, Rad50 and NBS1. This is the mRNA complex. So it will be coated by RPA. RPA is the replication protein A, and then then specific homologous recombination proteins are recruited to the nucleoprotein filaments such as Rad51, Rad52, and BRCA1 and 2. Rad51, as we have seen, is a key protein in homologous recombination as it mediates the invasion of the homologous strand of the sister chromatid, leading to formation of holiday junctions. So holiday junction we can see here clearly that this is formed by the crossing of the strands of the two DNA, means homologous DNA is there, so their a crossing over occurs between the two strands, and this leads to the formation of this crossing structure, that is a holiday junction, and then this holiday junction will be removed by non-crossing over, and the holiday junctions are finally resolved into two DNA duplexes. Other mechanism of repair is the crosslink repair. So during DNA damage, a crosslink can be formed between DNA protein or between the strands of the DNA. It can be intra-strand crosslink or inter-strand crosslinks. So this is problematic during replication and can lead to cell cycle arrest. A combination of nucleotide excision repair and recombination repair pathways is needed to repair DNA crosslinks. Inter-strand crosslinks are repaired by different protein complexes depending on the phase of the cell cycle. In G1 phase, inter-strand crosslinks are removed by nucleotide excision repair. Both sides of the inter-strand crosslink are cleaved by XPF on the 3' end and Fanconi associated nuclease 1 on the 5' end. Excision of the inter-strand crosslink is followed by translesion synthesis. Only a small percentage of the inter-strand crosslinks are repaired in G1 phase. Unrepaired lesions will present a major problem for the cell in the S phase. During S phase, the interstrand crossing is recognized by Fanconi anemia complementation group M, PANC-M. PANC-M binds to the abnormal cross-linked structures and protects against collapse of the replication fork. It also binds to the Fanconi anemia core complex containing PANC-A, PANC-B, PANC-C, PANC-E, PANC-F, PANC-G, and PANC-L. PAN1 and XPF MUS81 are also recruited to the crosslink site and excite crosslink. Replication through the excised sites is mediated by translesion polymerases such as REV1 or DNA polymerase. After translesion synthesis, the replication fork is repaired by homologous recombination repair and the crosslink is removed by nucleotide excision repair. Cells with mutation in nucleotide excision repair and homologous recombination repair pathways are modestly sensitive to cross-link agents. Individuals afflicted with this syndrome, Fanconi anemia, are hypersensitive to cross-linking agents. Chromatin that contains actively transcribed genes is most susceptible to DNA protein crosslinks. This is a picture which shows the DNA crosslink repair. So we can see in picture A, there is a crosslink. This is a crosslink formed between two strands of the DNA. So this crosslink induces replication fork stalling. And then the crosslink is removed from one strand by nucleotide excision repair pathway that we have read. Now this nucleotide excision repair is filled by translesion synthesis, resulting in mutation opposite the adduct. Then double strand break will occur that will be repaired by recombination repair. And then mutation second round of this mutation that was present here, that will be removed by a second round of nucleotide excision repair to remove crosslink adduct. And finally, DNA replication fork is re-established for the normal replication of the DNA. Now the mismatch repair. It removes base and small insertion mismatches that occur during replication. There are four components of this mismatch repair. First, the mismatch must be identified by sensors that transduce the signal of a mismatched base repair. Second, the mismatch repair factors are recruited. Then third, the newly synthesized strand harboring the mismatch is identified and the incorrect or altered nucleotides are excised. And finally, there will be resynthesis and ligation of the excised DNA tract. Mutations in any of the mismatched MSH, MLH, and PSM families of repair genes leads to microsatellite instability, for example, small base insertions or deletions, or it can lead to cancer, especially hereditary non-polyposis colon cancer. So this is a picture which shows the mismatch repair. The initial step in the mismatch repair pathway is the recognition of the mismatched bases through either MSH2, MSH6, or MSH2, MSH3 complexes. As we can see in the picture, MSH2, MSH6, or MSH2, MSH3 complex. Then these recognition complexes recruit MLH1, PMS2, MLH1, PMS1, and MLH1, MLH3 alongside the exonuclease XO1 that catalyzes the excision step. So here excision has occurred. Now a gap will be formed. So finally gap filling, synthesis, and ligation will occur. And a gap filling step, this will occur by polymerases, RFC and pCNA, and then finally ligation will occur. Relationship between DNA damage and chromosome aberrations. Cell killing does not correlate with single strand break. It relates better to double strand breaks. Agents such as hydrogen peroxide produce single strand breaks efficiently, but very few double strand breaks and also kill very few cells. Cells defective in DNA double strand break repair exhibit hypersensitivity to killing by ionizing radiation and increased numbers of chromosome aberrations. Radiation induced chromosome aberrations. If cells are irradiated with X-rays, double strand breaks are produced in the chromosomes. The broken ends appear to be sticky because of unpaired bases and can rejoin with any other sticky end. But a broken end cannot join with a normal or unbroken chromosome. Once breaks are produced, different fragments behave in various ways. Like the breaks may restitute, that is, rejoin in their original configuration. In this case, nothing amiss is visible at the next mitosis. The breaks may fail to rejoin. It gives rise to an aberration as a deletion at the next mitosis. Or the broken ends may resort and rejoin other broken ends to give rise to chromosomes that appear to be grossly distorted if viewed at the following mitosis. The aberrations seen at the metaphase are of two classes. They are it can be chromosome aberrations or chromatid aberrations. Chromosome aberrations. If a cell is irradiated early in interphase, means before the chromosome material has been duplicated, then chromosome aberrations will occur. The radiation induced break is in a single strand of chromatin, and during DNA synthetic phase that follows, means the S phase, this strand of chromatin lays down an identical strand next to itself, and finally it replicates the break. And the chromatid aberrations, in this case, the dose of radiation is given later in the interphase. Means the DNA material has doubled and the chromosomes consist of two strands of chromatin. The radiation might break one chromatid without breaking its sister chromatid, or at least not in the same place. A break that occurs in a single chromatid arm after chromosome replication and leaves the opposite arm of the same chromosome undamaged. So what are the examples of these radiation-induced aberrations? There are three lethal aberrations. Uh, Dicentric and ring, they are the chromosome aberrations, while the anaphase breach is a chromatid aberration. So this is a picture which shows the dicentric chromosome. So here we can see that two different pre-replication G1 chromosomes are there, and one break occur in each chromosome. One break occurs in each chromosome, like in this chromosome here and in this chromosome here. Now there will be an illegitimate unions. This chromosome, it attaches with this part of this chromosome, and this the remaining part attaches with the remaining part of that another chromosome. So finally a structure like this will be formed. Here it should be here in this picture it should have two centromeres, because one centromere of this chromosome and one centromere of this chromosome. So here it should have two centromeres, while this portion that this will be acentric. This is acentric since it does not have any centromere. Then replication occurs in the S phase of the cell cycle, and finally a structure like this will be formed. Here we can see clearly two centromeres are there, and this is the acentric fragment. Then this is another possibility in which pre-replication G1 chromosomes are there, and breaks in both arm of the breaks occur in both arm of the same chromosome, and they are joined. but this is an incorrect union. They join like this. A ring has been formed, and the acentric portion they join like this. And finally, replication occurs in the S phase of the cell cycle, and overlapping rings are formed. Like here we can see, like after replication, and then acentric fragments. They also replicate. Then what will happen if post-replication G2 chromosomes in break occurs in post-replication G2 chromosomes? So break in each chromatid, it occurs after replication. G2 phase, G2 phase comes after S phase. So already this is a replicated chromosome. So break occur in each chromatid. There is a break in each chromatid, and there is a sister union. Sister union occurs between this portion, our portion joins like this, and the below portion this join like this. So there will be sister unions. And then what happened during telophase, when the cell is, when the centromere they are pulling apart towards the pole of the cell, then a structure like this will be formed. Both the centromeres, they have moved to opposite poles, but they are unable to separate from one another due to this union, and this acentric fragment, this remain as it is. So this is dicentric chromatid plus acentric chromatid fragment. This is a picture which shows the radiation induced chromosome aberrations in human leukocytes viewed at metaphase. The picture is a picture of a normal metaphase. This is a picture of a normal metaphase, while in picture B we can see dicentric and fragments. Here we can see acentric, no centromere. This is dicentric, two centromeres. Then it can be ring. See, this is structure. This can be ring. And this is a picture which shows normal anaphase, while this bridge and fragment resulting from radiation, as we have seen earlier in the previous slides. This is a picture which shows the fish fluorescence in situ hybridization of a metaphase is spread from a cell that received 4 gray. The hybridization was performed with a cocktail of DNA probes that specifically recognize each chromosome pair. So chromosome aberrations, they are demarcated by arrows. Here is an aberration, here aberration, this is an aberration. So they are demarcated by various arrows. And this is a picture which shows a deletion. How is it? Like this is the matrix site, this is the nuclear membrane. So two radiation induced breaks occurred in the same arm of the chromosome. Two radiation induced breaks occur in the same arm of the chromosome. And then this arm, this portion, this joins, and it will form a ring, acentric ring, and this portion is removed. So a deletion occurs as an acentric ring lost at the subsequent mitosis. So suppose this region contains a tumor suppressor gene. Then after the loss of this tumor suppression gene, there will be carcinogenesis. Two important types of chromosomal changes that are not lethal to the cell are symmetric translocation and small deletions. Translocations are associated with several human malignancies caused by the activation of an oncogene, for example, Burkitt lymphoma. And deletions may be associated with carcinogenesis if the lost genetic material includes a tumor suppressor gene, as we have seen in the previous picture. So this is a picture which shows the formation of a symmetric translocation. What happens is that radiation produces breaks in two different Two different pre-replication chromosomes. The broken pieces are exchanged between the two chromosomes and the sticky ends rejoin. And the sticky ends rejoin. The aberration is not necessarily lethal to the cell. Then this is a diagram which shows the deletion. Deletion produces two breaks in the same arm of the chromosome, and the removal of this. So here two breaks occur, and this portion is removed, and finally this portion is joined. So this is deletion. Chromosome aberrations in human lymphocytes. So these are the biomarkers of radiation exposure. Like blood samples obtained for cytogenetic evaluation within a few days to a few weeks after total body irradiation, and the frequency of asymmetric aberrations such as dicentric and rings, which we have just seen in the lymphocyte, that reflect the dose received by the cells. And this cytogenetic evaluations in cultured lymphocytes readily can detect a recent total body exposure of as low as 0.25 gray in the exposed person. Such studies are useful in distinguishing between real and suspected exposure. For example, black film batches, and also in case of potential accidents in which it is not certain whether individuals who were at risk for exposure actually received radiation doses. The stem cells that sustain asymmetric aberrations, such as dicentrics, die in attempting a subsequent mitosis. Those that sustain a symmetric non-lethal aberration, such as translocation, they survive and pass on the aberration to their progeny. Dicentrics are unstable aberrations, while the symmetric translocations are the stable aberrations. Either type of the aberration can be used to estimate dose soon after irradiation, because soon after irradiation both the aberrations will be present in the cell. But suppose if many years have been elapsed, then scoring dicentrics underestimates the dose, and only stable aberrations such as translocation give an accurate picture. The frequency of chromosomal aberrations, dicentric and rings, is a linear quadratic function of dose, because the aberrations are consequence of the interaction of two separate breaks. At low doses, both breaks may be caused by the same electron. The probability of an exchange aberration is proportional to the dose D, while at higher doses, the two breaks are more likely to be caused by separate electrons, and the probability of an exchange aberration is proportional to the square of the dose, D square. So in this picture, we can see that at low doses, at low doses, both breaks may be caused by the same electron, while at higher doses, two separate electrons are required, and uh, this aberration is proportional to the dose square, while this at low doses it is proportional to the dose D. Thank you.